Howdy, loyal I'd Buy That listeners. This is co-host Jeremy. I'm just getting back from a trip to the beautiful Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Lovely trip. Lovely waterfalls, lighthouses. You know the deal. You probably don't know the deal. I don't think most people have been there. Anyways, I wanted to talk about a classic episode where we did a trip out to Chicago. A few times now we've driven out to Chicago and done episodes with some lovely guest hosts. This episode, we had guest host and co-owner of Pinwheel Records, Scott Schaaf. And we talk about the Korgis, dumbwaiters. And I gotta say, ever since we covered this album, I pick up my guitar probably once a month and play Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime. So, in honor of that, here it is.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be discovered or rediscovered.
Either
Can I start over?
You just start.
God damn it.
I realized my notes weren't in the right place, and I was trying to fix it and then just losing track of everything. Hang on.
Oh, was I supposed to have notes?
I remember my first time.
Welcome to I'd Buy That for $1, a podcast about inexpensive, common, and underappreciated records that are waiting to be rediscovered. I'm your perfect host and professional sympathizer of inanimate objects, Sean Hartman.
I don't understand. What does that mean?
You don't have to understand.
Okay.
I'm guessing it somehow ties into the episode.
Maybe just slightly, and I'll tell you about it later.
Fine. I'm co-host Jeremy, and I'm not as clever as co-host Sean, but I am now the caretaker of 12 royal corgis. R.I.P. Queen Elizabeth.
Oh, wow. Well,
You told me you were going to make an off-color joke. I don't know if I would call that off-color. That's like the slightest off-color joke I've ever heard.
I had to be very respectful. It's the queen. This will age very well.
I am co-host Peter Cook, and I am a big fan of bands that contain a member who share a name with a cult film directors.
Oh,
I've always said that about you.
usually comes up when I'm introducing Peter, yeah.
Yeah, this is what he's into.
And Peter and I are in Chicago. And why is that?
Yeah, why are we here, Jeremy?
Why are we here? It's because we're with another guest. Guest, show yourself.
I'm kind of the only guest, right?
That we're aware of as
That
of
we're
now.
aware of. The only guest we gave a mic to.
Fair. Well, we're going to have a bunch of folks trying to make themselves guests. We are on a busy street in Chicago. I'm hearing people walk by and yelling. I'm hearing car horns. But yes, I'm the only one with a microphone.
And who are
Sorry.
you, good sir?
Yeah.
Not important.
Depends on the day. Are you my therapist? Hey, my name is Scott Schaaf, and I am the co-owner of Pinwheel Records here in Chicago.
Oh, I think we've been here before.
This is a little bit of deja vu.
Yeah.
You guys were here
140 episodes ago.
That's exactly the number I had in my head.
He's been counting.
Yeah, it's true. No, we all got together a few months before the pandemic.
It was February 29th, 2020. So
Wow,
it was
okay,
a few
okay.
weeks, couple weeks
Yeah.
before it really,
Okay.
before lockdown.
Yeah, that was a lifetime ago.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a great time. Well, I had a great time. I'm not going to speak for you guys.
We had a great time.
Wonderful time discussing the masterpiece that is Sports by Huey Lewis and the News. We are sitting right next to the sports section that still lives on here. If you need a copy of Sports, this is the store to come to.
Yeah.
Can confirm. Plenty of sports here.
Huey Lewis is sports and otherwise, certainly.
Yeah.
You do have a few other records here. I was marveling at the Eazy-E record on the wall just moments before we started here.
You know, we do have a few other records other than Sports, thank goodness. But yes, there is an Eazy-E EP that is on the wall right now that came in a collection that had nothing else like Eazy-E in it. The wildness that is stacks of records coming into the shop. You never know what is gonna come in through that door.
Yeah. Well, what came in the door that you want to discuss with us today of all these options you have?
Well, it turns out I don't even really like music anymore, but there is a fantastic record by the Korgis called Dumbwaiters that I would love to discuss today.
Sweet. And what track would you like to give our audience a taste of?
You know what? The band decided that this was the track to start with on the album, so let's just jump right in with track 1 called Silent Running.
Futuristic landscape, futuristic skies, no birds, no vegetation, Earth remains despised. They scar and they maim and they mutilate, they do it in the name of freedom. Their madness no description can encapsulate, as a floating mausoleum. Silent running, silent running, silent running. Believe in Nostradamus, believe in what you will. Tell me that it had to be prophecy fulfilled. I cherish those who perish in the holy war to save the planet from extinction. Tell me, what will survivors be surviving for? Will survival be their one distinction? Silent running, silent running, silent running, silent running.
That is a great way to start an album, especially if you're going to make a kind of quirky early 80s new wave pop record. Just comes right out the gate, tells you what's going on. It's catchy. I was sold on track 1 when I heard this the first time, just a couple short weeks ago.
I am a failed bass player, failed musician. I don't even know if I want to say musician at all, but a guy who owns a bass guitar. How about that? As a bass player, a guy with a bass, how can you not love that first track? I mean, that bass line kills. I love it.
Yeah, a lot of great bass lines. I gotta say, my first time listening through this album, it didn't immediately grab me. And then I was rifling through some internet videos and I happened upon a performance. It was their first performance on Top of the Pops. They did their song If I Had You from their previous record, and it sounded like a Mojave 3 song to me, and I was just like, that just pulled me in, and somehow after that I enjoyed this album more. And I think just repeated listens. I feel like this is not for me at least, it wasn't like an immediate like, oh wow thing. It was more of like a grower.
I think it airs ever so slightly on the more into the quirky than you might initially enjoy, Jeremy.
True.
But there's still enough strong songwriting there that once you recognize the song, you can enjoy it for what it is.
Grower is the term that I was absolutely going to use too. When this was introduced to me years ago, I mean, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but there's a big hit on it, or what kind of was a big hit at the time, or a semi-hit, and had a second life certainly later on. That was the track that I knew, which doesn't really sound like much else on the album. So yeah, that was quite a surprise, and yeah, it took a while for it to really hit for me. And I'm also not I think it's fair to kind of call this a new wave record, or early new wave, or whatever. That was never like my area of expertise or fandom. More so now, certainly. But man, yeah, starts off strong. I love it. It's great.
And this album is 1980.
Yes, yeah.
And a UK album from 1980s.
yeah, right. Yeah. You can definitely tell. It's their second record. British band. They the two kind of main members of the group were actually in a band called Stackridge, which was like an early 70s, I don't know, like light prog, kind of folk, kind of whatever. Really hard to categorize band.
I would categorize Stackridge as they sound like a 70s version of the Beatles if Ringo had been the primary songwriter.
Oh, wow.
I like it. I think I'm going to give that to you.
All right.
Also,
perfect.
if I not that anybody needs my endorsement at all. If I'm not mistaken too, I think, going full circle here, I think George Martin produced one of the Stackridge records.
That's true. He produced the 1974 album Man in the Bowler Hat, which came out in America as Pinafore Days.
Yes, and that record actually kicks ass. I don't know if you guys got a chance to kind of dig into that in your research here, but yeah, that's a really good record.
The only thing I know about it is that it is not George Martin's favorite album that he ever produced, because that would be the Paul Winter Consort's Icarus, as we learned recently.
That's fair.
Yeah, I found Stackridge, certain songs I was like, this rips, and then other songs I was like, this is very 70s rock.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think an argument could be made that, this Korgis record, Dumbwaiters, is an amazing EP and a good album. I mean, I do love it. And I think that first half, the side one, is pretty much all rippers.
Yeah.
It slows down a little bit on side two, but I guess we're jumping ahead here just a little bit. But yeah.
I think Stackridge is an important part of their story because the Korgis feels like a reaction to their time in Stackridge, where they were touring constantly with Stackridge. They actually opened the first Glastonbury Festival.
Isn't that wild?
Which is, yeah, very wild. And they were like 19 and 21 when they started with Stackridge. And yeah, they just got tired of touring. They were not able to garner much of an audience because they were so eclectic and strange and would have these 7-minute jams. So the Korgis feels like kind of a reaction to that. And they've said as much. I was reading interviews with them that they wanted to make pop music and they wanted to work in a studio and not have to play a bunch of shows.
And that kind of backfired on them. They had some success on the charts, but never really hit big. And they never toured the US. And I think if they tour a couple times in the 80s, we talk about this band differently. Tough to say. I think they've kind of acknowledged that as much in recent years. But yeah, they're not the Beatles. They can't just decide to retire from touring and still sell millions of records. It didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised they're not even as well known as, say, Squeeze, one of their contemporaries.
Yeah. We were talking kind of before we started here. We have to rely, especially in the kind of pre-streaming days, we have to rely on cool friends to introduce us to a lot of stuff. None of us just like magically became fans of some, obscure band. Somebody had to kind of tip us off a little bit. I am fortunate to have had to have a very cool friend. Shout out to Carrie Tucker of Einstein's Sister, excellent power pop band. You guys should check out, please. But Carrie, he introduced me to the Korgis. He actually, at the exact same time, he burned me a copy of this album and also of that Stack Ridge record that we were talking about. And he's like, "You're gonna love this." And it took a minute, but he was totally right, and I'm very grateful for that. He also introduced me to a lot of other amazing stuff that makes me seem cooler than I am.
Yeah, I had never heard of this group prior to you saying that you wanted to. This was your selection.
Hey, same here. But he knew that I liked Squeeze. That's kind of trying to bring that back here. He knew that I liked Squeeze, probably because he introduced me to Squeeze at some point. So he's like, "Okay, yeah, you like Squeeze. You're gonna definitely like this Korgis record." And yeah, he wasn't wrong.
Did John Cale ever produce any Korgis records?
No.
I don't think so. I don't think Elvis Costello did either.
Or did any of these members go on to host popular shows?
No, I yeah, Late Night with James Warren.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that show, right? No.
Jules Holland was in Squeeze, for those who
Yes,
don't know.
yes. Thank you for explaining that's helpful. Yeah, those Squeeze records are great, though.
Yeah, they are.
I was also unfamiliar with the Korgis before my cool friend Scott told us about it. And then when I was listening to it, though, when the hit song played, Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime, I was like,
Jumping ahead.
I'm jumping ahead a little.
Yeah.
But I
yes.
was like, I know this song, but not quite. And then it dawned on me that I looked it up and it was like, oh, Beck did a cover of this for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. And that's actually how I know this song.
It's true, yeah. And so that's I think where a lot of people kind of discovered the Korgis. When I was obsessed with Eternal Sunshine when it came out, saw it in the theater like 2 or 3 times, and Beck's version of that song is amazing. And I didn't know anything about it. I wasn't really paying attention to the end credits to see who got the songwriting credit. Just assumed here's a great Beck single that I'm gonna love. And I think that's when I was talking to my friend. I was like, "Yeah, did you see that movie? How about that? The soundtrack's really good. John Bryan is all over it, who was amazing." And he said, "Oh yeah, he's covering the Korgis there." Like, huh? What? And so that's where we kind of got into it. Yeah. Sean, what do you say? Let's jump in. Why don't we play Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime?
Sounds like the perfect transition. This is side A, track 5.
Change your heart. Look around you. Change your heart. It will astound you. I need your loving like the sunshine. And everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Everybody's gotta learn sometime. Change your heart. Look around you. Change your heart. It will astound Everybody's gotta learn sometime.
Man, that track. That song should be the biggest song in the world. It's so good.
And it's their biggest song, but that's that's about as commercial as they get success-wise, right?
Yeah, I want to say it was like what, number 18 on the charts, something like that.
Yep.
And again, if they had toured at all, especially in the States, I mean, I think that's something you'd hear on, the 80s stations today still, all the time.
They certainly were predicting a lot of 80s new wave musical trends with this record. They're a little ahead of the curve. It makes sense that this got big, and wish they could have ridden it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it was on that kind of leading edge of the sort of new romantic sort of sound with that song in particular.
Yeah,
Though
yeah.
Not really as much with the rest of the record.
Oh, no.
In the interviews I was reading, I found it pretty interesting that the inspiration for the kind of sound behind it and the message, it's a song written by James Warren. The two main songwriters, James Warren and Andy Davis. This one was a James Warren track. And
Also both in Stack Ridge.
These were the same two that were in Stack Ridge together.
We finally named them.
We finally named them. James had a strong interest in Buddhism at this time, and he saw this as like a message of kind of the universal Buddhist views on humans' relationships with each other.
I've always said that about this song.
Yeah.
Always. No, but it makes
That
sense.
was that was what drew you into it initially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. During my Buddhist phase.
Well, and that would make sense using it in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, it was a brilliant pick. I don't know whose idea it was for Beck to do that track, but I don't know. You put Beck and John Bryan together, and magic tends to happen. And I mean, I love the original, but I don't know the original without that appearance. And I think it's the same way for a lot of folks. And it still has staying power. I mean, people still love that movie, of course. Beach House headlined Pitchfork a few years ago, and they covered this song.
I just realized that this is like the template for Beach House.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
You said that.
And I think that's a compliment, certainly. But yeah, it totally made sense. We got there early, selling records that day, and we heard them sound check, and they played that in sound check. I was like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. Also, this is awesome.
There's one song and band that I kept thinking about in comparison to these guys, and I feel like this song has to be at least a little bit influenced by the big 1975 hit I'm Not in Love by 10cc.
Hell yeah. Yep.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and fittingly, when I was checking them out on Spotify, the first thing to play afterwards was Godly and Cream Cry, Godly and Cream being from 10cc.
Yeah, and also I feel like the Korgis' biggest and only hit, Everybody's Gotta Learn Sometime, is kind of like a cross between 10cc's I'm Not in Love and Godly and Cream's Cry.
I can see that.
Perfect meeting place between the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And those are the biggest hits for each group, and not necessarily similar to a lot of the other stuff that they recorded. So there's a lot of interesting parallels between these guys.
It's a good point.
And I've always loved the production in that 10cc track. It's so good. Very ahead of its time, I think. And the production on this record I think is really strong too. It's produced by the band and also David Lord. David Lord, quite a character. He did a lot of production. He produced some Peter Gabriel stuff, including his fourth album, Security, I suppose, here in the States. He did XTC, The Big Express. He worked with Kate Bush. He worked for Tears for Fears. He actually worked with Tori Amos later. He did some production for The Pretenders, Echo and the Bunnymen. He's done all kinds of stuff. Still active, I believe. However, I would argue that the most interesting fact about Mr. Lord here is back in 2015, he was convicted of running a brothel.
Oh, wow.
As one does. He somehow didn't go to jail. He, I guess, in his years doing this, he made about $160,000. But he promised that he'd pay it back, so he didn't go to jail. So he's got that Korgis money coming in, I imagine. He'll be just fine, But David Lord, What a character.
Yeah, I didn't know we were going that route.
Oh, we're going that route. We got to have a good sex scandal mixed into a podcast episode, if I know anything.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's more there, too. That seems like the kind of thing that happens when, a powerful politician was perhaps a visitor of the place, and he's like, how about you let me off instead of
Yeah.
starting that conspiracy here.
You just give us a thin promise to kind of do better.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. Peter Gabriel does get a thanks in the liner notes for Dumb Waiters. I am not sure exactly where that comes from. Hopefully, a listener, can clue us in on that. But I couldn't find anything in my research. I don't know. Maybe they're just going for some cred. Like, hey, yeah, we're friends with Peter Gabriel. He's cool, right? He was in Genesis.
I imagine Stackridge and Genesis had to play shows together back in the day.
That makes
seems
perfect
like a
sense,
perfect
right?
pairing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Peter's another guy that, came from like a prog-related kind of weirdo band into making these 80s pop hits.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was like top of the pile at this point, 1980.
I found the relationship between Andy and James, the two main songwriters, to be pretty interesting and fractious as well. Did you want to talk about that, or should I?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, during this album, Andy was actually supposed to sing on a few of these songs, and he just walked out of the sessions and left James Warren to sing pretty much every song on this I think every song on this album. And Andy only provided some background vocals, and then he quit the band. And the band kind of broke up, but James Warren put some other people around him and released James Warren and the Korgis material.
Yeah, the person I was alluding to with my introduction was Stuart Gordon, who I believe is on this album.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is the violin and acoustic guitar player on this album.
Okay. Yes.
And there's also Phil Harrison on keys and percussion. And that's the main core of it there.
Stuart Gordon was not this Stuart Gordon, but it was another Stuart Gordon was the director of the cult classic Reanimator.
Ah.
That's from Beyond, and then had involvement with everyone's favorite Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
You are so Peter that it's adorable. But Andy and James, they butted heads in Stackridge, and Stackridge ended up breaking up. And they're like, let's make some commercial tunes. And they ended up putting together these Korgis albums, which that lasted from 1979 to 1980 before they broke up. And then in 1992, they end up getting back together and making another Korgis record, The World's for Everyone, and end up breaking up again shortly thereafter, getting back together in 2005 and putting out an album called Unplugged, and then breaking up shortly thereafter. And they're also reuniting in Stackridge on a couple occasions during these times. So they just keep it's this interesting magnetic force where they feel like they have to work together.
I can't quit you, man.
Yeah, they know it's
clearly what's going on here.
It's good, but it's also bad, and then they just break it up.
So the Korgis put out a record in 2021, and I believe both Andy and James are involved in that. So, and I mean, they've talked about their relationship. It's got to go way back because that Stackridge record that we were talking about, James Warren is all over it. There are 7 guys in the band. There are all kinds of photos of the band. James Warren is not there. He's not in any of the photos. He doesn't, I mean, he gets some credit, of course, but the other guys in the band have their own individual photos. James Warren doesn't.
Interesting.
What's going on there?
Curious.
Yeah. I feel like there's personality stuff going on.
See, if the Korgis got big, I'm sorry to interrupt. If the Korgis got big, we'd absolutely have a behind the music on the Korgis, and I need this.
Yeah.
I need this.
This is what we need. Someone out in the world that has the power, the reach to do that.
Please make it happen. But seriously, this band should have been huge. And I mean, that's kind of the theme of, the records that are discussed here. Like some of these artists, some of these albums, just everybody should know them. Everybody should own them. But, the music industry is not fair, as we've learned thousands, millions of times at this point.
Yeah.
And I saw it stated a lot that the Korgis and to some extent Stack Ridge were kind of more studio bands than live bands. Like they just function better in that environment. So I wonder if like just being on the road and playing live shows made it dysfunctional. Like maybe they got along pretty well in the songwriting and recording process. And then when you had to take it to the stage, it just didn't work out anymore.
I think there could absolutely be something to that.
Well, they specifically said, Andy and James said they wanted to do the Korgis as a studio thing, and they did not want to do live shows. Like it was very intentional that they didn't tour the U.S. or they barely played anywhere. And that was their intention, and they recognized looking back like, oh, that probably stunted our chance at becoming internationally famous, but
Yeah.
I didn't sense that they regretted it too much.
Very few people can be Harry Nilsson and have that level of success without touring.
It's true. Yeah. Let me have Sean play another track for us. We're gonna jump backwards here. This is track 3 from side 1, and it's called "Perfect Hostess."
Amazing friends, such high and low, out in the pouring rain, where freedom runs and darkness grows. Talk about anything, you're in the know. Be the perfect hostess, the modern wifey. When you're coming rolls, they come out at night. They'll never get excited. Let them all believe you are the perfect hostess. You are the perfect hostess. Amazing friends, you're lots of fun, smiling at everyone. Just be yourself. You hold your own. Talk about anything. They're going home. You'll be the perfect hostess, the modern wife. You and your common rollers, they come out at night. They'll never get excited. Let them all believe you are the perfect hostess.
Melodically, that, and even vocally a little bit, I was hearing a little George Harrison there, maybe. That one.
Definitely.
Yeah, I can hear that for sure. It's another track too where like bass is kind of the star of the show, which is again maybe why I'm kind of drawn to this record. This record is all over the place. Again, that's first side is incredible. There's a track, the fourth track is called "Drawn and Quartered," and it sounds like it's like a disco, like it's a Giorgio Moroder track almost. Like it's crazy. I was debating whether or not we play that, but that's a tease. Everybody go check out this record and make sure you listen to that track
Yeah.
because it's wild.
I hope does it resemble the feeling of being drawn and quartered?
No.
Nothing like that.
I've experienced both, and no, it's not the same.
I'm gonna say I can't offer too much in my experience there. And side two, there are some great songs for sure. There's some more new wave jams. There's like a total ballad that it's good, but it doesn't. I don't know if it quite fits in the rest of the record. And again, I'm jumping ahead here a little bit, but the last track is called "Rover's Return," and it's an instrumental. And I swear, Gene Belcher must have heard this track because he's very influenced in his work. If we've listened to Gene Belcher from Bob's Burgers,
I was going to say, isn't that
yes,
from Bob's
yes,
Burgers?
yes. His synth work is certainly influenced by Rover's Return, the last track. But it's an instrumental. It sounds nothing like the rest of the record, and it was still released as a single, which I don't know what was happening there. I don't know what drugs Asylum Records was on, but man, it's wild.
Well, it was released as a Christmas single, wasn't it?
You tell me.
Yeah, because
You think you thought I was an expert on this, and I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Well, I think I watched that song like on a YouTube video, and it had a 45 sleeve. I was like, wait, this was a single, and then I like looked it up, and yeah, they released, it looks like 2 different Christmas singles. One with them doing the song "We Wish You a Merry Christmas" with the title track "Dumb Waiters" as the B-side, and then they did another version of it with Rover's Return as the A-side and "Wish You a Merry Christmas" as the B-side.
See, if I saw a release called the Korgis with a Christmas song, I would just assume it was dogs barking Christmas music.
Well, spoiler alert, it's not Christmas music, but there might be some dogs barking in Rover's Return.
Yeah. It's cute enough to be Christmas music. Also, the 45 sleeve is adorable. It's just 3 corgis sitting underneath a Christmas tree.
Oh, man. Somewhere there's an Etsy store that just had a great idea for a Christmas card.
Put it on a t-shirt, I'd buy it.
For $1.
Yeah.
Oh, I get it.
Sean, what would you buy for $1 that sounds like the Korgis?
Well, first up, I would definitely buy Godley and Cream's Freeze Frame from 1979, which features one of my favorite songs by them, a real creepy number called "I Pity Inanimate Objects."
Oh, your title.
Yeah, such as Dumb Waiters, Inanimate Objects. So that album has a lot of similarities to this in that it's very quirky and is kind of looking forward to the 80s new wave sound. And there's some weird stuff on there, but it's a great record. Another one found while Peter and I were writing handwritten reviews for records we found at the store that no one wanted to buy until we started hyping them up.
Way back.
Second recommended album, another one from 1980, Split Ends, True Colors. I believe I've recommended that one before. It's a great album.
Yeah. It's the Crowded House guys before they were Crowded House.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Also, the super cool laser etched LP that is a nice surprise when you pull it out of the jacket. I don't know why that's another record. I mean, clearly sold millions of copies, but criminally underlooked, and it's always
You see it everywhere.
$5.
Yeah. Well,
People are messing
kind
up.
of
I don't know.
I mean, were they technically a one-hit wonder as well?
They might have had another hit. Without looking it up, I don't know for sure, but that has the one big hit on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Definitely the kind of group that people like forget what their hits were and just forget that it's associated with that band. But yeah, like their big hit, which is on that album, the song "I Got You," is a good one.
Yeah.
That's True Colors from 1980. And my third recommendation is a band that got name dropped several times in this episode, which means that this was probably a good pick. Squeeze, East Side Story from 1981.
Wonderful. Yeah, Squeeze they're better known than the Korgis, but I think they're still pretty overlooked overall, maybe especially more in the States than the UK.
I think that's
Sure.
true.
Yeah, and you can find their records pretty cheap. I mean, people that like 80s music are going to buy Squeeze records pretty fast, but still underappreciated to a certain extent.
I think that's one of the rare instances too where the greatest hits, the singles collection is actually, it's not everything you need from Squeeze, but it's pretty dang close.
Yeah, 45s and under.
Yeah,
That's the name of that.
Absolutely worth owning anybody's collection. It's so good. And then you dive deeper into, the rest of the catalog, which is very strong.
Yeah, Up the Junction by Squeeze is one of my all-time favorite songs.
It's so good. It's a perfect song.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a chorus, right?
No.
I actually have a recommendation this week as well, as I was working on our mix for our Patreons. That's if you're into Patreon.
Patreon.com/I'd Buy That Podcast. Check it out.
Little plug there. But I was working on the mix, looking for similar artists, and I kind of got down this rabbit hole with Scritty Politti, who I did not really know much about, and found they were like a political leftist punk band that for whatever reason got into like 80s new wave pop. But they have an album their first album called Songs to Remember that is, I feel like, kind of falls right in between the two, that I thought was really, really good.
That career arc sounds not unlike your buddy's Chumbawamba.
Oh, yeah, very much in the Chumbawamba mold, or I guess Chumbawamba would be in their mold.
Yeah, they would have followed that. The KLF, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would recommend that one as well if you're into these tunes. It's definitely a similar flavor, poppy, catchy, a little new wavy, but there's like more depth to it than some of the more poppy stuff. And even their own later stuff, I feel like some of that depth kind of was given up for mainstream success, but
We've all been there.
we've all been there.
No judgments. I feel like maybe he's gotten a shout out in this podcast. I'm not sure, but Howard Jones. Howard Jones totally rules. His 1985 record, Dream into Action, is great. It's got Things Can Only Get Better and No One Is to Blame, which are two incredible singles that I love with all my heart. So yeah, Howard Jones, huge in the UK and certainly had success here in the States, but kind of a forgotten guy, especially these days. And again, his records are a dime a dozen at this point, and are worth your time, certainly.
Yeah, Sean, I think you got into Howard Jones a little bit, didn't you?
Yeah, I remember putting on some of his music and being kind of surprised at how good it was, because a lot of his album covers just seem really generic and weren't selling me based on the artwork. And you drop the needle, it's like, oh shit, there's some jams on here.
I feel like Howard Jones is an artist that I judged before hearing.
Yes,
I assumed
definitely,
he was on a certain.
You see the records everywhere and they don't look interesting, so it's like, oh well, all signs point to this not being good.
But you just never know till you drop that needle.
This is true.
You never know. So I have a recommended episode. I think the album is mostly dissimilar, but I thought a lot about the band New Shoes and the episode we did on their album Poolside from 1986. There's a group that, also kind of unfairly relegated as a one-hit wonder and went through a lot of different stylistic shifts before ending up a one-hit wonder in the 80s, where you're just like, this sound you've been searching for forever just suddenly fits perfectly where you're at, and then it's all over just as soon as it began.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a fun episode with guest Ike Turner. So yeah, recommended to check that one out for our listeners. And Scott, while we're here in your wonderful Pinwheel Records store, is there anything else you'd like to discuss regarding how you do things here?
We're here in the Pilsen neighborhood in Chicago. We've been here 7 years. We're grateful to have survived the last 2.5, 3 years, thanks to some of our awesome customers. We're still here. Check out our website, pinwheelrecords.com. Our Instagram is kind of where we do most of our stuff. That's just at Pinwheel Records. But yeah, we're always trying to post cool stuff. If you're not local, we're happy to ship to you. And, we're always happy to have your support, and we'll do everything we can to come through for you for whatever you're looking for.
Also, it's not actually Pinwheel Records for the month of October this year, is it?
That's true. I wasn't sure if we wanted to allude. Yeah, today we are in October right now, and the store has a Halloween costume this year. We are now Pizza Power Records.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we've got some nice displays courtesy of Kim and our friend Jess. They've done some awesome work. Also, shout out, we have a giant Michelangelo action figure from our friends at Toy de Jour here in Chicago. Please check them out as well. But yeah, we're doing the whole Ninja Turtles theme here. And, which is perfect because I loved the Ninja Turtles when I was 8 years old, and I'm kind of perpetually a child at this point. So this is fantastic for me.
Yeah, I did see that member of the Foot Clan over there. I hadn't even realized what was happening. I was like, that's an interesting decor choice.
Yeah. You come into a record store expecting to run into a foot soldier, right?
Yeah.
Always.
Well, for our listeners, when you hear this in November, you missed out, but you'll just have to look towards next year to see what Pinwheel Records does for Halloween.
We're all out of ideas. Oh. We've been out of ideas for years. No, we'll bring our A game once again.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to set up in here and record with you and talk about the Korgis.
Absolutely, my pleasure. I'm always psyched to talk about awesome records, especially records that are, you could say, criminally underlooked and underappreciated.
That is our thing. Yeah.
Maybe. Right on.
And with that, we're going to be going out on this the song we teased earlier.
That's right. Number one single. When you hear the song, it just screams number one hit. Rover's Return by the Korgis, 1980. Again, if Gene Belcher has never heard this song, I will eat my hat.
It's a Tottenham hat he's wearing today.
It is a Tottenham Hotspur hat. This is true.
I had a moment earlier after you mentioned Gene Belcher. I had a moment where all I could remember was a moment on Bob's Burgers where he's trying to get out of a situation. I forgot who does Funky Town. I have to go look it up. And then shortly later, he's like, I remembered, it's Lips Incorporated. It's probably the most I've ever related to a fictional character.
Wow.
Again, we've all been there.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps it up then. So thank you so much for listening to I'd Buy That for $1. As we mentioned earlier, check out the Patreon, patreon.com/I'd Buy That podcast for more content. And that said, my name is Peter Cook.
My name is Jeremy Ruggles. Go to Pinwheel Records if you're in Chicago.
And I'm Sean Hartman.
And I am Scott Schaaf from Pinwheel Records. Thanks so much, y'all. Really appreciate you.
Look forward to having you again, Scott.
Ooh, can't wait.
It won't be so long next time.
Can you make that promise? Do we know that there's not a pandemic around the corner?
We don't.
No.
Fingers crossed.
And we leave you with that, audience.
Yes.